Hey guys, welcome back! I'm not a huge fan of fighting games, but I absolutely love a good old classic beat 'em up with or without weapons. So here's not 10 but 16 amazing beat 'em ups that I'm always going back to. Let's take a look. You all remember Bruce Lee dressed with that yellow tracksuit, right? If you were too young or living under a huge rock until this precise moment, just go grab a copy of the movie Game of Death from 1978 and watch it right now. It just traced the path for the scrolling beat-em-up genre of video games. The original script even had a primitive reference of the hero going face to face against hardest opponents as he progresses. So by 1984, Irvine released Spartan X, or Kung Fu Master if you prefer, which is considered the game that started the beat-em-up fever that drank huge inspiration from that amazing Bruce Lee movie, even being licensed from a Jackie Chan film entitled Wheels on Meals, and from where only the names of the main protagonist and his girlfriend were used. As you can see, it features all elements from the beat-em-ups we grew up with, receiving such an overwhelming universal acclaim and ported to practically all 8-bit home computers and video game consoles available by then, and its creator went on designing the original Street Fighter for Capcom and later for SNK, was the mastermind behind the famous Neo Geo arcade system board and some of the best fighting games ever created, like Fatal Fury, King of Fighters, Art of Fighting, The King of Fighters 94 and Samurai Showdown. So without further ado, I present you my 16 favorite classic beat-em ups with some hack and slash elements thrown in.
Target Renegade.
Target Renegade made me fall in love for this genre. Back in 1988, it totally compensated for the investment on a ZX Spectrum 128K Plus 2 or Plus 3. It came from Ocean Software bearing Imagine's logo and was one of the first offering a true 128K dedicated version that would play music throughout the whole game. It was also, in my opinion, the first successful attempt on a two-player co-op beat-em-up game for home computers. In Target Renegade, we fight our way through Scumville, packed with its own inhabitants, known as the Scumbags. Yeah, I just had to say it. So we fight our way through these hordes of scumbags towards a final level confrontation with Mr. Big. And that's pretty much it. No damsel in distress, no president of a big country to save, nothing. Just a final confrontation with that so-called Mr. Big. But let me tell you, playing Target Renegade on the ZX Spectrum back in '88 at home felt like the arcade in town had just moved inside my own house. Yeah, brilliant!
Double Dragon.
Double Dragon was my first experience at the arcades and the follow-up to Renegade, another astonishing fighting game that I only played on the ZX Spectrum, and again our goal is to rescue Marion that was kidnapped by the Black Warriors gang, so expect a lot of punching, kicking and elbow attacks. Its sequel, Double Dragon 2 The Revenge, was also a huge deal for me, but on the Amiga. In this one, things got even worse, cause the Black Warriors gang came back and, in retaliation, ended up killing Marion. So the Dragon Brothers are back with a vengeance. It's not the best conversion of the arcade original, but it's way better and more enjoyable than Binary Design's first attempt. Strangely, never managed to play Double Dragon 2 at the arcades.
Bad Dudes vs. Dragon Ninja.
Bad Dudes came at a time when movies featuring ninjas were all over the place, mainly with the American Ninja franchise starring Michael Dudikoff. And needless to say, I wanted to be like him. I wanted to be a freaking ninja. And I love games with ninjas. I guess that I'll be bringing in the near future my favorite games featuring ninjas. What do you think? Bad Dudes vs. Dragon Ninja, or just Bad Dudes, or simply Dragon Ninja, offers 6 levels of intense action, beating foes over and over to complete each level. Obviously that a game like this would have an end-level boss, 2-player co-op and power-ups like extra health, extra time and weapons. We start off in Washington DC, where President Ronnie was kidnapped by the evil Dragon Ninja. This reference to President Ronnie or Ronald Reagan was removed from the NES port and changed to simply the President, cause Nintendo of America did not allow political content in their games. And besides the NES, Battletoads vs Dragon Ninja was ported to practically all computers and consoles of the time.
Shadow Warriors.
Shadow Warriors was Ninja Gaiden's European title, released back in 1988, and was curiously and almost simultaneously developed and released alongside its home console counterpart for the NES. Even so, the two are distinct versions of the game, with just a few similarities. I only managed to play the NES version over at a friend's house and found it extremely difficult, so I've always preferred the arcade version. Also played the ZX Spectrum and the Amiga ports back in the day, and the latter is a pretty solid one that obviously came from the masters in arcade conversions, Ocean Software. The game takes place in United States locations such as Las Vegas, Los Angeles, the Grand Canyon, North Carolina and Brooklyn, and there is a boss fight at the end of each one. We play as Ryu Hayabusa, whose mission is to avenge the death of his father. He soon discovers an evil and supernatural conspiracy intended to unleash a terrifying evil upon the Earth. The attract mode from the arcade cabinet is iconic, but even more iconic is the continue screen, where our character is tied to a table while a circular saw is being lowered towards them, begging for more coins to be inserted. Ryu's life is in our hands. This arcade version is also included as an hidden bonus game in Ninja Gaiden Black, exclusive to the original Xbox and released back in 2005.
Growl.
You know how a sucker I am for Indiana Jones style of games, and these characters from Growl really resemble Dr. Jones' character. I recall being the first to try out this new arcade game when it arrived at one of my local arcades. The technician that installed it even gave me a bunch of credits to try it out and start the fuss. I was immediately hooked, and besides that, it carries a strong message. We play the role of a sort of wild animal lover and forest ranger who must protect the wildlife from a group of evil men that are driving this species to extinction. Species that includes lions, deers, elephants, eagles and others. Along the way, we'll encounter several cases of animal cruelty that we must stop. Besides the traditional fist fighting, weapons can also be found and collected, even including grenades, rocket launchers, whips and swords. The ammo available is quite limited, so use it wisely. But let me tell you that in Growl, it's really difficult to stay wise when all these thugs attack us simultaneously. Gladly, our wild friends will offer help in these more complicated situations. This is another example of an arcade game that can be enjoyed by 4 players simultaneously, depending on the cabinet, obviously, and a year later was ported exclusively for the Mega Drive Genesis.
Battletoads Arcade.
The Battletoads franchise came about due to the overwhelming success of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the NES, so instead of Turtles, Rare offered NES fans the chance to play with Toads. Needless to say that it also became an instant success. So the Battletoads franchise ended up having one last installment on the arcades back in 1994 that we couldn't play anywhere else. At least till 2015, time when it was included in the Rare Replay compilation available for the Xbox One. As you might know, a new Toads game will arrive soon, as teased on Microsoft's E3 press conference back in June of 2018. This game is packed with humor, frenetic beat-em-up action, a bit more violence than normal for a Toads game, and even voice-overs. Another huge hit from the Stamper Brothers that could have been ported to the powerful consoles of the time, like the PlayStation, the Saturn or the N64. By then, it seemed that everyone was contaminated with horrible full-motion video stuff and primitive 3D gaming.
The Simpsons.
With The Simpsons, Konami captured brilliantly the quirky feel of the TV show in which it is obviously based. The characters, their own particular styles and sounds, the iconic locations like Moe's Tavern, Krusty Land and the nuclear power plant, everything is in this amazing arcade game that came after the successful Bart vs. the Space Mutants, exclusive to home video game systems, and that I've played to exhaustion on my ZX Spectrum. Up to 4 players can control the Simpsons family, fighting various enemies in order to rescue little baby Maggie. The Simpsons family witnessed a robbery and one of the stolen diamonds accidentally landed in Maggie's mouth. So baby Maggie started using it as a makeshift pacifier and the robbers had no choice other than take her with them. Yeah, that's right. This is nothing more than a Simpsons interactive episode in where we can take control of all the action and fate of the Simpsons family. Isn't this awesome? I absolutely love it, cause I'm a huge fan of the animated series. Curiously, it was only ported to the Commodore 64 and MS-DOS soon after its launch in the arcades.
Alien vs. Predator.
Unlike Battletoads, Alien vs. Predator remains to this day exclusive to arcades. It's one of the most incredible and best examples of licensed mashup ever seen in a video game. It can be played by up to 3 players simultaneously that must choose from the 4 available characters, one of those based on Major Dutch, Arnie's character from the movie Predator. And again, back in the 80s and 90s, I was a sucker for everything Schwarzenegger related. Upon release, back in 1994, it was an instant success. Players would pile up and peek over each other's shoulders just to have a glimpse of the amazing gameplay that this game provided. And just prior to Alien vs. Predator, The Punisher was also a huge deal for me at one of my local arcades back in 93 and 94, mainly because it's based and centered around my favorite character from the Marvel Comics Unmatched Universe. And the 1989 movie starring Dolph Lundgren is one of my favorites in the history of forever. It came also from Capcom, and its success formula served as template for Alien vs. Predator. In The Punisher, 2 players can take part of the action, both as Frank Castle, aka The Punisher, and Nick Fury, with the one and only mission of killing Kingpin and all his henchmen. Unlike Alien vs. Predator, The Punisher had an exclusive port to the Mega Drive Genesis. It was kind of a weak achievement from Sculptured Software, and that's probably why AVP never got a home version of its own.
Vigilante.
Vigilante was intended to be a sequel to Kung Fu Master, the game that started this healthy fever. The gameplay is similar, with only a different plot and scenery. Along with Target Renegade on the ZX Spectrum, Vigilante also made me start loving the beat-em-up genre. It was exactly what I was after in a fighting game. As you probably already know, cause I've mentioned it a dozen of times on other videos, I was never a fan of the Street Fighter series that had its debut a year before Vigilante and Target Renegade, and never had the chance to try the very first Renegade at the arcades. By that time, many action movies were all about martial arts and kicking ass, basically, and I was after a similar experience on a video game, and Vigilante offered the chance to fight our way and save our kidnapped girlfriend. Do you recall her name? Madonna, yeah!
Cadillacs and Dinosaurs.
What Cadillacs have to do with dinosaurs, you may ask? What I know is that it was based on a rather successful comic book named Xenozoic Tales, set in a post-apocalyptic future that spawned a not as successful animated series from CBS. And alongside with the animated series, Capcom released an arcade video game that glued players to the screen with so much simultaneous action through these beautifully detailed scenarios. And 3 players could join in and beat the hell out of enemies and also engage the dinosaurs that inhabit this hostile alternative future. Sadly, it remained an arcade-exclusive game that I would have loved to play back in the day on a Nintendo or Sega console.
Streets of Rage.
The first Streets of Rage was the real deal for me when talking about this franchise, because back in the day, this was one of my most played cards on the system. And bought this one because of Golden Axe. Nothing more. The iconic intro, the astonishing music, the arcade-like colorful graphics, man, this blew me away the first time I tried it. It offered a 2-player co-op with a choice of 3 characters, Axel, Blaze and Adam. Each had his or her own strengths and weaknesses, and I bet that many of you would choose Blaze. Right? Many years before Lars Short's, Blaze's red skirt was like a magnet. Yeah. It's one hell of an amazing beat-em up, but probably the most iconic special move ever in the history of video games was this special attack that saw a police car arriving at the far left of the screen, followed by an officer that would climb out of the vehicle and fire this huge weapon that shoots explosives everywhere that surprisingly only kills the bad guys. Amazing stuff to say the least.
Knights of the Round.
Every single one of us have already heard the story about King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, so with Knights of the Round, we had the chance to be part of this story in this hack-and-slash beat-em-up and role-playing game where, as we progress, our playable character has the ability to upgrade his weapons and armor. There are 3 playable characters to choose from: Lancelot, Percival and Arthur, the main protagonist that pulled out the sacred sword Excalibur, and his destiny is to slay the evil King Garibaldi. Horses are also present and of extreme importance, cause we can use them to ram the enemies.
Teenage Mutant Ninja or Hero Turtles.
So it seems that no one talks about this, but in Europe, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was known as Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, cause some brilliant mind thought that the word ninja was just way too violent for our European fragile minds. Just can't quite know why. On screen, he splashed the altered logo and the music playing is the exact same old song from the animated series repeating ninja over and over again.
Hang on, April!
But never mind, it was my first experience with a 4-player arcade video game, and that's not just one more video game, it's one of the greatest titles ever made for arcades, and seeing all 4 turtles in action is so overwhelming that it looks like if we're part of an episode of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated series in which the game is based. So we have to rescue Splinter and the lovely April, and for that we must fight our way through hordes of foot soldiers and face the Turtles' worst enemies. It's still for me the best Turtles video game ever.
Golden Axe.
I guess that everyone on Earth played Golden Axe. It's one of the most fondly remembered video games ever, and also one of my first experiences on a DOS machine equipped with VGA graphics back in 1990 at school. With this amazing artwork and backstory that somewhat reminds me of the fantasy medieval scenario of Conan the Barbarian, from where the game was in fact inspired, we must guide our heroes across the besieged land of Uria, slaughter the main villain Death Adder, free the king and his daughter, and gain possession of the Golden Axe. Sounds simple, but Death Adder's foes are tough and have some of their own moves up their sleeves. Except these skeletons. And this Uria spot must be a very odd place, cause both Tyrese Flare, the Amazon chick, and Axe-Battler, the Barbarian, spend the entire game walking around in their underwear. Yeah? Okay, jokes apart, I can simply recall other video game available till that time, in where we could cast magic spells, ride dragons and fight skeletons, all this on the backs of a giant turtle and of an eagle. Brilliant stuff!
Final Fight.
Now, and as for Final Fight, it must mandatorily be played on a real arcade with a proper arcade stick. As I said before, I was never a huge fan of one-on-one fighting games like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, where the play is confined to a kind of ring. But these sort of side-scrolling beat-em-ups were my thing back in late 80s, and Final Fight is my absolute favorite. I need to have a purpose on a video game to keep me focused, and again, in Final Fight, we simply have to save Jessica, the daughter of Metro City's mayor. Amazing level design, amazing sound, amazing music, amazing ambience, a freaking amazing game in all respects. It was hugely influenced by the also astonishing movie Streets of Fire from 1984 and suffered from a bit of controversy when it arrived in the US. The fact of players being able to beat up women was a huge problem, so Capcom's American division simply stated that Roxy and Poison were transsexuals. So now, in a flash, it was okay for players to beat these girl-like 100% dudes. Yeah, go figure. As seen and judging by my choices, playing beat-em-up games at the arcades was for me the ultimate experience. It was where you could find the top of the line in what video game related technology was concerned. Obviously, that having the chance to play at home those ports from my favorite arcade games was a truly awesome experience, but the good old arcade stick will always have that unmatched feeling. And here you have it, my favorite classic scrolling beat-em-ups with a few hack and slash elements. Tell me down in the comment section below your personal favorites. I wanna discover more, cause despite not being a fan of fighting games, I'm a sucker for beat-em-ups. So if you've enjoyed this episode of It's a Pixel Thing, please like, share, subscribe and click on that bell icon so that you're notified when all my future content becomes available. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Cheers!